I've torn down nearly 150 bad engines on this channel. We've seen the widest variety of failure modes that I ever thought possible, but yet we haven't had one that we knew wasn't a flood. We've had engines that were full of water and rust and all kinds of problems, but we haven't had an engine that we know is submersed, and let alone submersed with regular water, but salt water, because this is a 40,000 mile LS1 out of a 2002 Camaro Z28 that was in Hurricane Ian. I know that was nearly a year ago at this point, and I suspect that most of the water has evaporated out of this engine. This was from another salvage yard. They bought a lot of cars. I actually bought several cars from Hurricane Ian myself. Some of them were really not bad, and some of them, they were rough. So we're going to find out what happens when an engine is exposed to salt water. Now, this was a total submerged, so that means water over the top of the roof. So I suspect there's not going to be a lot of good internal parts on this engine. We're not going to see bent rods. We're not going to see bent push rods or any major malice in the combustion palace, but this is going to be a challenge, and I hope I can get this engine all the way torn down. The LS1 is perhaps the most widely known LS architecture engine. It's a 5.7 liter all aluminum pushrod V8. They make anywhere from 300 to 350 horsepower, and you can make some crazy power with a big cam and some nice heads. These are very widely swapped into tons of different cars, but they came in the C5 Corvette, the Camaro, the Firebird Formula, and the Trans Am, and the GTO. But of course, these engines were also offered in other vehicles in other parts of the world. Now, this being a late F-body, it's an 02 Camaro, should have some nice things like the LS6 intake manifold. Otherwise, this is a pretty standard Gen 3 small block Chevrolet. I think these were rated at either 325 or 345. I'm sure someone will correct me. But this one doesn't make any power. And we're going to turn it over. We're going to try to turn it over. Nope. It's locked up. The next thing is to drain whatever's in the crankcase, because I don't know if I want to call that oil. And now this thing could be drained, so there may be nothing in it. See what flavor of caramel this is. Oh no, that's henna color. Henna color at all. So that's what's coming out. I think that's that new 0W0 stuff they're running in all the new cars. The very next thing I'm going to do is work on the harness. We're going to try to get this out of the way. It'll clean up my workspace quite a lot. Looks like I just have a few grounds. Oh, looks like this line is built into the harness. And there is one harness that is probably worthless. And it's pretty much scrap harness wire at this point, because most of those connectors have corrosion in them. All right, now we can start pulling the bolts out of the intake manifold. It should be loose. Oh, we're leaking something. Oh, we're leaking water. We're literally leaking water. The Gulf of Mexico is on my floor right now. Oh, that's rough looking. That should do it. Whew. And I know I never said viewer discretion is advised, but yuck. If this is any indication of what the rest of this engine is going to be like, I might be here pretty late. But we're going to get this all the way torn down. Every part of this is getting torn down. We're going to see what survived this terrible disaster. Well, I don't know what's growing in there, but it's not good. It's also growing in there. You can definitely tell there's been a lot of moisture in there. Ugh. This is going to be a tough one, guys. I have no idea what that stuff is. If you know what that is, some sort of aluminum oxide maybe? Penicillin? Oh, that one's still got some Gulf in it. Wow. Yuck. Well, it looks like I was correct. It does have the LS6 intake manifold, which is probably the most expensive part on this engine. I don't know that I would trust the injectors off of it, but I do have a broken one here, so I'll probably swap all the parts over and have a good, complete LS6 intake manifold to sell. Next, I'm going to strip this side of the engine down a little bit. We're going to get some of the emissions equipment off and the coils off. I wonder if these will come out without breaking. We're going to find out right now. That would be a first. Came right out. Well, this doesn't look quite as bad. I expected them to look much worse. The next thing I need to do is remove the power steering pump. And to do that, you're supposed to pull the pulley off, but it looks like this pulley was damaged. This car wasn't wrecked, so I bet this happened when it was moved around after it was pulled from the car. So there's one way we could do this, or we could use the right tool, or we could just... So I have easy access to the bolts to pull this off. Now the pump itself is probably okay. The steering system is very well sealed. So it would take a lot for saltwater intrusion in the power steering system. Now we can take this bracket off. Moving our way around the front of the engine, it's time to remove the water pump.
Well, 40,000 mile original GM, still has that smelly deck school in it. It's a decent looking pump. Probably good to keep around here as a spare. You know, I got an LS powered vehicle or two.
While we're here, let's remove that steam pipe. And on to the other side, let's get these coils out of the way. Now the part that I've been dreading since I laid eyes on this engine, the dipstick tube. So this is either going to come out or it's not. Those are the only two choices. Oh, this is going to come out. Look at that. See, you just got to talk. Oh, it's bent. Ah, well, that was part of the oil pan kit. No broken bolts. That's how you know it's a low mileage engine. All right, now for our first actual look inside. It's gonna be fine. It's not as overwhelmingly bad as I expected. Well, there's definitely some rust in here and still some, not oil, it's watery, oily, pasty, marmalade stuff. But it doesn't look too bad, really. Now, you keep in mind, most of the stuff is covered in oil. It's coated in oil, which kind of keeps the moisture from sitting on it. Maybe that's why it doesn't look too bad. Now for the other side. Okay, that's worse. Well, this side is much more of what I expected. You can still see there's some salt water sitting in the pockets in the top. Stuff growing on them and the push rods. Now let's crack the rockers loose on the left-hand bank. Yikes. Let's pull the push rods out. Rust. Looks like it's been sitting in the field for a while. A really, really long while. Now we'll get the top row of head bolts. Well, now it's time to crack the head bolts loose. Got the brakes on. Oh, the smell. Unpleasant is the nice way to put it. Okay, here's a big reveal moment. Oh, it's still got some coolant in it. It almost all went in the pan. It does look like someone tried to get this thing unstuck. This is fresh oil or trans fluid. But what is this? Ew. I don't know what that is. Or this. Well, this looks like rust water. Oh man. Well, I guess I'm gonna rotate this to pour all this out in my pan. Let's pull the head gasket off. That part looks good. This part, not so much. Now the head looks better than I expected. It just looks a little sketchy in this combustion chamber. Some more of that. No. Why is my brain like that? All right, let's pour this stuff out best we can. It's like 50% of it made it into the pan. There's no worry, I've got plenty of pigment to clean it up. So let that sit for a minute and drain while I clean up this mess. So this is what was left behind. I'm not going to taste that. Yeah. Sorry, that was a little close. Now these two aren't nearly as bad. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to wipe these out the best I can, and that way we get a good idea of how the actual condition is. Oh, what kind of salad dressing is this? So these two still, okay, this one's not so bad. This one is not so good. I don't know what that looks like underneath the piston, and this one is, well, I'll just show you. This is going to be some work to get out, but not nearly as bad as that 454 was. That one was way worse than this, but I don't think that was from a saltwater flood. This one isn't too bad. I think that one's the best of them all, at least from this bank. Now on to the other side. Those aren't nearly as bad as the other bank, but those... Wow, this one actually is a bad push rod. It had an oiling issue. Same with this one. So the reason I said this has an oiling issue, so the closer push rod is out of the passenger bank, or right side bank, and you can see it's got kind of a brushed finish. And that tells me that this wasn't really rotating as it should, whereas this push rod's from the other bank, and you can see it's got a mirror finish. And that's a good looking push rod, at least the end of it is. Okay, see what's behind head number 2. Lots of deck school all over my foot. Let's go ahead and pull off head gasket. That looks good. We're going to do the same thing as the other side and make a big mess on the floor, more so than we already have. Well, this side looks pretty rough too. Pretty thick rust. And then there's whatever this is.
Yeah.
We're going to get this cleaned up and see how bad this side is. But first we'll look at the cylinder head. And it doesn't look too bad. I think these heads could be saved. I would definitely recommend a valve job. But I don't know if that's worth it. They're 241 casting heads. Not super desirable. Before we go start trying to tear the cam out of this thing, pull lifters, valley, all that stuff, I'm going to try to loosen up some of this rust. I'm going to spray some penetrator in every cylinder. Is this the best for this? I don't know. Is it what we're going to use? Yep. Let's go ahead and pull these trays and lifters out. That's about how I expected that to work. Now to pull these out, I brought my hose pliers from work. They seem to work pretty good for pulling these lifters out just because of how they grab the actual lifter. Oh boy. They don't move at all. No, those are solid. I guess this is what they mean by solid lifters. Nope, I think I got one. I got a live one. Well, there's one. Oh, 15 more to go. It's going to be a long night, guys. Oh, I think I got another one. Well, that was good. 3 out of 8. Not good. Let's try something a little bit weaker. No. Oh, wait. We're halfway to halfway. How could I get these freed up? Should I hit them with a hammer? I think I'm going to hit them with a hammer. Let's just give it a little
taparoo.
Let's try to shake these up a little bit. I don't really care what happens to the lifters, but of course I don't want to damage the block. That part might be salvageable. Oh, I think I got one. Okay. Well, I guess that kind of worked. All right. We just have the front two. Those are very stuck. I think this one moves now. I guess the hammer trick works. It sure did. I'm sure there's a better tool for this, but this is what we're using. Okay, one solid bank of lifters out. Let's move on to the other side. Now this side isn't as rusty. No, it's just as rusty. It's fine. I was just trying to be optimistic. Let's see what comes right out. First one, no problems. Oh, we're moving. I just poured salt water out of the top of that lifter. That one is not coming out as easily.
Or that one. Or that one.
So it's much like the other side.
Hammer time.
Did that do enough? Nope. Yes. Well, I spoke too soon. I think I'll be able to get this one out just fine. Oh, man. This is like a horror show, and the kind with an H, not a W. Oh, we got it one moving. This is going to be some work to get this short block apart. This one does kind of turn, or it did. It might be past tense. Oh, yeah. Okay, down to 2. Wow, that one is very stuck. I think that one was just in a bind. We gotta give this one a couple more taps there. And then there was one. Yeah, it moved. I moved it. Well, I had moved it. Lifters are the toughest set of lifters I've ever had to remove. I think I've got it here. Ooh, Sparkies. It's definitely having to come up right now. I don't think that's what that means, but I don't know. I'm too old. This is the dipstick tube of this engine. I knew the dipstick tube came out too easy. That was just... That was too convenient for that to come out that easily. Oh yeah, this is gonna come out. The smell is starting to get a little overwhelming. It smells like a damp, flooded shop. I know that smell all too well because, well, my old shop flooded. But these lifters, they put up a struggle. Some of them don't look too bad, and then there's some of them that, well, that cam may not come out. They pretty gritty feeling. This one does not. This is not a roller anymore. That's a flat tappet right there. It's just disguised as a roller. Yeah. These are all bound for the scrap bin. Now it's time to work on this valley cover. First, we'll get all the bolts out. Ooh, that's kind of ugly in there. What if I just... Oh, okay. Yeah, I gotta buzz these knock sensors out. Ooh, it doesn't like that one. Not gonna give it a choice. Oh yeah, it still doesn't want to come loose. Blue! Okay, let's see what it looks like behind this thing. Gotta be careful prying on this. Oh, wow. Well, I guess this engine has measles. It at least has lots of rust in bad places. So the lifter bores don't look bad, which is good. The cam looks bad, which is bad. Now it's time to get the crank pulley off. Now I've got a brand new harmonic balancer puller. I always use these OEM Tools pullers. I love this thing. There's nothing wrong with the other one, but I bought one for myself so I can keep it locked in my box because the other one had a tendency to grow legs. I don't think this one will grow legs because, well, they can't grow legs if they're locked in a toolbox. Let's see if my little guy will do this. Nah, that's going to take too long. This one, though, like a glove. Now we can pull the front cover. Well, that's very loose. Nope, not going to say it. Oh, wow, smell bad. I was a little too close for that one. So let's take a peek here. Well, the chain moves. It is really rusty in here. Now we'll get the cam gear off. Usually you can just like so. Now this plate. So one of the things you may notice me do is when I take these LSs down, now I know it's been a minute since we did an LS, but I usually put some of the hardware that most people reuse back on, like this plate and these bolts will go back on after the cam comes out, because if you get a bare block and it's missing some of this hardware and you don't have another engine to pull it from, it can nickel and dime you to death. And I would otherwise just throw these in, in my scrap bin, and that seems like a waste for everybody. Now we get to see if this cam comes out. I'm going to bolt the cam gear back on, and we're going to try to pry that out. So watch this. I think this is going to come out just fine. Oh, yeah. Oh. Ooh. Well, the fact that this cam came out gives me some hope that we can get the rotating assembly out. The journals don't look bad at all. The lobes all look bad. Especially this end. There's just no coming back from that. It's a shame too. These stock LS1 cams do sell. This is let's see what number this one is. 2154. That's the last four of the part number. So I don't know if that's one of the really good ones. They changed the cam profile throughout the years of these engines. The cam bearings are really nice looking, from what I can see from here. Crankshaft, not so nice. Now we can turn this thing upside down and pull the oil pan. Let's pull the oil filter. Ooh.
Yuck.
Now we can work on this oil pan. I'm saving all the hardware because when I sell these oil pans, I typically sell them as a complete kit. Let's see, does this just lift off? Sure does. Ooh. The smell in here is like what I smelled earlier times 800. So I pulled the bolts onto the baffle. We always take these out to clean these pans anyway. And let's take a look at what's underneath. Ew. Ew. What would you call this? Why do I keep touching that? Yeah, that's going to mess up the parts washer. We're going to have to like mop this stuff out before I actually run this thing through the parts washer. But I don't see any damage to the actual pan, and the little bit of rust on the baffle is not too big of a deal, much like it won't be a big deal on the windage tray. But the pickup, that might be a different ordeal. Now this does not look great. This is going to be some work to get apart. At least it looks like it. Maybe not. Maybe it just looks way worse than it actually is. There's definitely a bunch of ick in there, but who knows how long this thing sat with salt water in it. Now we'll get the pickup and the windage tray out. Now that the windage tray and pickup are out of the way, we can get a better look at what the rest of this looks like. And it smells like a wet, oily shop. It's pretty bad. Now we can remove the oil pump. And now the chain comes out. Poor chain. Now let's blast this oil pump apart. Oh. That is taking some effort to get out. Well, that's the ugliest looking oil pump we've had in a very long time. Look at the rust and corrosion on this thing. Look at that. We've never had an oil pump look like this on the channel. I don't see any wear. It's just destroyed from corrosive salt water. So I guess we're going to start with this rod right here. We're going to try to get this rod cap off and knock the rod and piston out of it. And we'll go until we can turn the crank over. I don't think we can get all of the rods and pistons out in its current position. That's one piece. Let's give it a little help here. Well, the rod cap appears to be one with its neighbor. There we are. Ooh, this is gonna be rough. Well, we've got movement. This probably is one of the lesser rusty cylinders. Barely caught that. Okay, now this one has one bolt that's... Yeah, no, I can't get to that. Let me go look for an 11mm wrench. All right, we're going to try this wrench. See if we can get this rod cap bolt loose. That is tight. Let's give it a bump with the hammer. Next, we'll crack the other one loose. Oh, wow. That was a surprising event right there. Now, I don't think this bore is terribly rusty, so we have a chance of getting this out. Oh, I shouldn't have said something. There we go. We have movement. Now the next two, pretty easy access to the bolts, which is nice. I think this one isn't too rusty. We're getting close to the top of the bore. So far, all these are moving. Well, shucks. It's all right. These really aren't worth anything anyway. Now it's time to go to the next cylinder, which I think I can get the bolts out. Yeah, I don't even need that. This one won't be bad. It's the one next to it that I have my concerns about. Now this one's at the top of the bore, so I don't really anticipate too many problems here. I shouldn't have said a single thing. There we go. Movement. All right, so far so good, but we haven't run across any of the tough ones yet. Now I have two very difficult to reach bolts just because of the position of the crankshaft. So I don't know if this is going to work or not. I know I can get this one loose. I think I can do this with glue. Now keep in mind, this crank is not worth anything because of what has happened. Well, let's try the ratchet wrench. Yeah. I really don't want to try to turn this crank over until all the rods and pistons are out, just because of what I've seen as this has come apart so far. I could have gone without that, but at least it didn't land in the pan. All right, don't do this. It's a bad idea. I mean, it's a good idea because it worked. And now I have to get the easier one loose. Look at that. We're doing it. This one is very, very not wanting to move. Now I'm going to skip the next cylinder and go to the last, just because I have easier access to the rod cap bolts. Now this one's already at the top of the bore, which is nice. Well, I don't really have access to both of those rod cap bolts, so I guess we're going to try to turn this crank over. There's only one rod still attached, so maybe? No, not even close. Let's put a bigger breaker bar on it and see what we can do. Nope, it is still incredibly stuck. All right, we're going to actually try on this. This is a definite maybe. I'm not quite sure, but I am sure that I'm going to try. Okay, well, the easy one, it's taken care of. Okay, let's give this another shot with old Blue here. Oh, that was a happy sound, I think. Give me my wrench back. That's not a good sign. Oh, man. That was not my back, thank God. You would think with what I do that would be my back, but that's what we're trying to get right there. Can I get it through this side? Oh, let's try that. So now I'm going to take the wrench and double up wrenches. Please work. Got one turn out of it. Oh, I think this is going to work. Let's see if I can do it without two wrenches and just one. Yeah. We're getting it done. Oh, that's great. The last thing I want to do is damage this bore any more or damage the block in any way. The rotating assembly is, at this point, probably not worth its weight in scrap, or just worth its weight in scrap. Can we get this off? Would you look at that? It's time for some more oomph. I've got a mini sledge on my other hammer. Oh, yes. Well, that is wonderful. Well, the rod bearings look terrible, but not because it was starved of oil or gone too far on oil changes. I'm pretty sure that's because of the corrosive properties in salt water. They're not grooved up. They're not coming apart. I mean, they're kind of coming apart. They're just really corroded. Lots of oxidation. And the rods, very rusty. Some of these, the wrist pin is very loose and nice and free. And some of them, like this one, this is locked up here. Let's see if I can move it. Oh, a little bit. It doesn't like to go that way. So that is what makes it really tough to turn those cranks over, because not only does the rod journal have to turn on the crank and the crank turn in the block, but the wrist pin has to turn in the piston. And this one doesn't really. I don't know how many more are like that. Some of these are pretty decent. Oh, that one's very stuck. The rings all look pretty good. I didn't see any damage to any of the pistons. Even the one that went flying, I don't know which one that was, didn't see any damage. Next, we'll start on these main caps. Hopefully these come out okay. Oh yeah. Blue, I need you. Oh, more flood water coming out of this thing. All right, now I think this will come up with this rear plate here, this rear main seal plate. I think that'll happen. Not even a little. But I bet it turns over now. Probably not. There's nothing holding this crank now, so I want you guys to know that. Ah, now it'll come out. This plate is a problem. Let's try this again. I had to loosen the arms of this engine stand. Let's try to get this thrust bearing out of here. Oh, I might have damaged it. Darn. Let's get a chisel driver. Wow. There we go. It's not supposed to be that difficult to get these off, just so everybody knows. With the sheer volume of crusty ickness makes this, it's worse than like when a bearing is spun. Will you just, well, yeah. We haven't seen bearings look like this before, and these took a lot of force to get out. That corrosion was significant. And this crank it's just done. I mean, yes, I suppose you could potentially turn it, but it is not worth the machine work. It is not a super desirable, super expensive crankshaft. It's unfortunate, but this is probably going to end up in the scrap bin. There's just too much damage. It's going to take too much effort to make this nice, especially for the value of it. I think these bores could be saved. I mean, you're definitely going to have to go over maybe 10 thousandths. It's really hard to say. It looks like this was in really good shape before the water, but you know, when I did a Carfax on the VIN from this vehicle, the last registered miles were like 41,000 miles 6 months prior to the flood. Still pretty ugly though. It's definitely worth investigating. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the bare block through the parts washer. That way you guys get to see how nice this thing actually turns out. And who knows, maybe somebody wants this for their build. I don't know if a lot of people build 5.7s anymore. Everybody seems to want 6.0s and 6.2s, but you never know. I'll keep this one out of the scrap bin. This is about 2 hours in our parts washer. You can still see there's a lot of corrosion on the outside of this block. Now, I guess you could probably scrub all this down with like a Scotch pad if it really mattered. I mean, this is still better than most of the Midwest engines because, well, they put a lot of salt on the roads here. But the important thing is the bores. Now, the bores, they are pretty heavily rust pitted. When we've wiped these down, there's definitely a lot of pitting. I don't know if this would clean up with 10 over, and I also don't know how far you can go over on a 5.7, but I'm sure someone in the comments would be happy to let me know. Is this a block that's going to need sleeves, or can it be fixed with machine work? That one's really rough. On the other bank, some of these aren't quite as bad. I mean, they're still not great. You can see it's pretty good pitting, really deep. This stuff's really deep. It feels like 60 grit. Cars get flooded and totaled every single year. Whether it's fresh water or salt water, the damage can be incredibly severe, but it does depend on a few different variables. The obvious one, how deep was the water? I bought about 30 cars last year from Hurricane Ian out of Florida, and they varied as far as how nice or destroyed they were. I had cars that the water was over the roof, and I got body panels, some wheels, and that was it. And that's okay, because they were cheap. But then I also bought cars that weren't even flooded. And Florida issued a certificate of destruction because there were so many cars that were totaled. There weren't enough people on the ground to actually look at all these cars to prove they were totaled. And the cars went to the auction as a flood car. I had at least 3 cars like that. A 135, an LS460, and I can't remember what else. But then there's another variable here, and that is time. And to me, that's the biggest variable here, because If a car gets flooded, it doesn't matter with what kind, if you wish to save the engine, you have to get on it right away. You have to drain the oil, make sure there's no water in the combustion chambers, turn the engine over, rinse all of the moisture out of that engine. It is labor intensive, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get it all out. But it does significantly increase your chances if you can do it right away. Are insurance companies going to do that? No, not at all. Not even a chance. There weren't even enough adjusters to write all the claims on all these cars after seeing the cars in person. They're certainly not going to have anybody to work on them. So when you find a car at the auction and it says water and flood, if it doesn't run or doesn't power up, be leery, because if it was flooded 6 months ago and stuff sat with water in it, even if it's fresh water, it's going to be bad. It's just, stuff doesn't recover from that amount of time with water in it. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. I know it's not my normal one, nothing's blown up or failed. It was an external failure. But I wanted to show you guys what could happen. We haven't done something like this. So if you'd like to buy parts off of this engine, or you need other LS parts, whether they're heads or blocks, I do lots of Gen 3 and Gen 4 stuff here. I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to Importapart.com and peruse our inventory. I've been uploading our parts cars just about every single week, including this 91 Corvette L98. Got lots of good parts on this car. You can fill out our part request form on our website, which sends us an email of exactly what it is you're looking for. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.